Part 2, Chapter 6, The Cursed Ones. I turned to face them, anger reignited. "Who the hell are you? And what are you doing in my house?" He chuckled sinisterly. "Your house? If that's true, then where have you been? I've been looking all over for you." He spoke softly, but seemingly pushed his voice to reach me. I tried peering past the shadows, but couldn't quite maintain a visual. It's like the darkness moved and thickened to keep his form obscured. The glow of his eyes set off all sorts of alarms, trudging fear up in my throat and curdling a comfortable rage. "You're one of the Tuffle," I declared. "That's right." There was a faint giggle to his words, like he was trying to contain himself. "Sorry to interrupt, but I draw the line at preserving human lives. That isn't why we're here, right, sis?" He stepped closer, revealing who he was, a complete stranger in my eyes. A teenage boy around my height, wearing a blue sweatshirt, gray cargo pants, and a thick black cross necklace. He had almost shoulder-length, choppy, greasy black hair, eyes wide as could be, and mouth displaying a large, beaming sneer. She spoke in my head, but her word passed somehow to him. "Hello, Destro." "Oh, not fair. I don't know your true name, but I do recognize your pathetic light. Frail as you were in the muck of the ditch. It won't feel right calling you Alice when I stomp your brains in." He grimaced. When he spoke, I got this tight feeling in my head. Not entirely painful, more like my brain was getting crushed by bubbles. I flinched, affected by his presence and words. "You would be remiss in assuming my strength. My state in the ditch should not temper expectation." Alice purred. "The ditch? What's that?" I interrupted. She sort of side-eyed me from inside my head. "Our birthplace. It's like a pond where we feed and mature." "Stupid name," I said plainly. "Really? Is that all you have to say about it?" She questioned sternly. "With everything I'm learning recently, a bowl of water for demon souls isn't all that crazy sounding, okay?" He took the conversation back. "You know, I gotta say, the girl you're with is kinda cute." My jaw loosened, caught off guard. "Cute?" "Delicious, in fact." I shuddered. He took an intentionally slow breath in through his nose, then let it out of his mouth. "He's been so patient. You'll have to forgive his excitement. But he wants you to know that keeping you alive would be preferred. He likes them warm," he said through a dirty grin and playful tone. My face was burning hot with fury and embarrassment. "Okay, that's enough. What the fuck are you? Some kind of perverted demon?" Destro giggled, and Alice rolled her eyes. He answered with a childish innocence lathered with sarcasm. "Me? No. But you see, my boy has a troubled past, and, well, he gets really pent up. All you little humans have such unique backstories to thrive off of. Some struggle with guilt, some fear, others pure rage. And occasionally, lust gets tossed into the mix. Unfortunate for you." He took a step closer. In this small bathroom, we were practically face to face. Being so close, I experienced a heat wave, almost like he was radioactive. My brain tickled with invasive thoughts. Everything Alice told me about the fight, the struggle for power. Clearly, he's here to take my life, and I'm supposed to take his. But if I do, according to her, I'll lose more of myself, and she will get that much closer to taking my body. I huffed. "I'm warning you. Get lost." Suddenly, he threw his arm forward, a tightly bound fist stopping just short of my nose. A slight wind tickled my face with his swift and accurate movement. My eyes went wide, my mouth dropped a little, and my entire body quaked in response. "Oh, I'm sorry. It sounded like you were threatening me. Was that too much for you?" He cocked an eyebrow. My lungs seized and a startling understanding weighted heavily. I couldn't respond. He sneered. Man, this sure will be disappointing. With a sudden harsh grip, he took hold of my throat and cut off all airflow. He raised me half an inch off the ground as I gasped sharply before turning his body and throwing me behind him. I slammed into the outside wall, back first, and my head followed with momentum. The back of my skull crashed into the sheetrock, cracking the wall and bringing a disorienting swirl to my vision. I crumpled on the floor, lying on my side and trying to recover my stolen breath. He stood beneath the doorframe, crossed his arms, and looked down at me, still clutching to my lost lung. I peered at him with one dizzy eye. He then hunched down and grabbed hold of my hair. Ah! Bastard! I slapped and grabbed his arm, but he yanked on my hair, making me screech out loud. I punched hard at his arm and was able to knock myself loose from his grip. Thinking fast, I stepped backward down the hall towards my room and faced him. My brain fires signals in random directions, causing twitches and aches to surge my muscles. Desperate, I raised one leg and kicked at him, but he reached out and grabbed my leg with both hands. Our eyes connected, mine full of worry, and his vibrantly glowing with confidence. He used the grasp on my leg to swing me into my open door frame, neck slamming into one side of the frame and my hip hit the other. My vision went white for a brief moment. I heard Alice shout, but it faded in a millisecond to a dull tone. My vision returned as colorful splotches that assimilated into the shadows that swallowed us both. I felt my body swing in the opposite direction and crash into the balcony railing. He released me, and I lingered in the air for what seemed like a minute, until finally my limp body crashed to the living room floor below. My body bounced like a deflated basketball, and a harsh gasp of air shot into my lungs. The dust sprang upward, then rained down on the floor like snow falling in slow motion. I coughed violently. Stunned, I lay still, lightheaded, unable to feel my back or legs. Scattered cuts and bruises bled under my clothes. Many acute lacerations and welts formed up and down my spine. My muscles went numb, but my skin screamed in pain. A warm, wet sensation engulfed my entire backside. My back! The hyperventilation started, and my vision began to pulse as fear overloaded my system. How swiftly he attacked and dismantled my posturing. Brutal, unforgiving, terrifying. It's not broken, you're just in shock. Get up, quick, Alice demanded. I can't move, I cried. You goddamn child, move it! She shouted angrily. My voice broke. Alice, help me. My lungs stretched. I don't have an opening. You aren't angry enough. Destro stood above me, his glowing purple eyes radiating with hunger and malice. He crouched at the edge, pushing a broken piece of wood off. It clattered by my feet, and a second later, he landed at my side. He stood there, glowering down at me, not a flicker of pity or humanity in his expression, only demented pleasure. Wow. Sad. He laughed creepily as he slowly sat down next to me, his legs crossed. Now that you know your place, you mind talking to me for a sec? My teeth clattered. Get bent, asshole. He frowned. Not nice. Then he made a fist and crushed it into the center of my chest. My ribs bent inward with the dull impact, and a soft crack reverberated through my bones. His fist retracted, and each new breath I drew caused a stabbing ache in my torso. Listen, I like to think I'm pretty good at tracking energy. Sniffed yours out, maybe 800 miles away. Took us days to finally arrive. We found this dump, and would you look at that? Empty. He poked my cheek with his finger in a playful way. Just a concentration of leftover vigor. What gives? I could feel the fire in my belly, but it wouldn't spread. Smoldering, tasteless. I couldn't get past this fear. Alice was quiet. What the hell do you want me to say? I winced, feeling a cough that wouldn't come. I don't know shit about how all this works. I groaned, head falling back as my head got hot and started to really throb. His face flattened, lips solemn and considerate. It's just so curious. mysterious. Your power is much more dense up close. He leaned a little closer and placed his cold palm over my nose. I held my breath, eyes wide and arms struggling to interfere. I could sense his intent somehow. One little push, and he could cave my skull in, send my nose into my brain and be done with it. But he was hesitant. His expression remained flat, and he spoke to himself. You're right. I did promise you a living host. Just be quick. His hand retracted. What are you saying? Horrified, I confined in his gaze. The pieces fell into place, and a new fear bubbled in my bones. You know what? I have an idea, he said, followed by a fierce punch to the side of my head. The sharp blow forced a violent twitching to seize my fingers and wrists. Then they relaxed. Gently, he placed one finger on my forehead, not pushing it, only enough for our skin to connect. I don't normally do this, he struggled to speak. It leaves my boy upset because he has to relive some nasty shit in order to trade. But it'll be worth it, I think. He closed his eyes, and with that, mine rolled into the back of my head. He was pumping energy into my brain, invading my mind and scraping against Alice's own soul. I was suddenly withdrawn from my body, sunken into the floorboards, and found my wispy self floating in a vibrant sea of trees. Gliding along the ground, I was forcibly drawn into the forest, gaining speed without any way to restrict my non-existent body. The trunks and leaves melted into colorful streaks as my blinding haste drove me forward until I stopped. Where I rested now, spiritually, was outside a window of a house. Moss and pine needles decorated every inch of this forgotten relic, but I could sense life inside. Lucas. A hushed, childlike voice brushed through the trees. The window grew closer. There were bars between the outside world and the black walls within. The world shut down in an instant. Darkness overtook the sky, and only a faint orange glow crept between the steel beams. Inside, a body rested on a bed, sprawled, lifeless, arms dangling to the floor. A new voice beckoned, fearful and shaking.
I'm sorry. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault.
He cried. The single bulb on the ceiling suddenly got brighter, revealing the body of a little girl, torn open and shredded inside. Her soulless gaze looked at me outside the window, gray. A searing pain swelled in my gut as I drank in the emotions radiating behind these bars. A well of passionate sadness bleached my flesh and forced tears from my very soul. It was unbearable. The feeling I experienced could not be described in words. Then, this reality was pinched, and my eyes rolled back down to see Destro pulling his hand away. A girl, sweet and innocent. Her energy is so polite. I wonder what he shared with you. He cackled, then leaned in close to whisper in my ear. I'm gonna swing by your friend's house after this and skullfuck her until her brains ooze out of her ears. Again, he raised a fist and punched the side of my head, further setting in the concussion. After that, he wrapped his fingers around my throat and pressed down, bending my neck and restricting my breathing to only tiny huffs. I lay on top of broken beams and shattered glass, eyes half open, my dark surroundings spinning out of control and silently building hatred. A cool touch then stirred up the fire within. He laid his hand on my hip and slowly moved it upward, sliding it gradually under my shirt. Slowly, so slowly, he began to rub my stomach, ice cold, rough hands persistently caressing my lower belly. I couldn't move, not on my own, no matter how much I tried. Just random, misinterpreted twitches throughout my limbs. The darkness around me enveloped my vision, consciousness fading. Kim, Alice whispered, her electric voice booming in my ears, waking me, provoking my hunger. She spoke calmly, almost comforting. My eyes shifted around ecstatically under my eyelids, searching for any light, any blip of safety. You're too afraid, she whispered. Now his other hand came down my waist. One finger pushed under the waistband of my pants. Then he started to dig downward on the belt line. His breathing was full of perverse motivation, loud and raspy. Fear is not enough. You want my help? She hissed. A cool breeze brushed my skin, a breeze that did not exist to anyone else but me. My pupils restlessly dilated. Get up. Get angry, she commanded. Or are you really going to let him do as he pleases? His guiding hand rose upward, fingers gliding toward my chest. He stopped, looked at me, and leaned in, his mouth less than an inch from my lips. My face was blank and distant. Alice whispered, So weak, so undeserving. If you can't fight, then she'll die. You said you'd protect her. Protect her? My dimming brain was attempting to reanimate. You have to kill him. Destro's hand had risen up my shirt, and his overgrown nails tickled my rib cage as he grabbed hold of my chest with remorseless aggression. The pain it caused forced my brain to jolt. With that stimulation, Alice spoke again, softly. Get up. Suddenly, there was a detonation in my head. In an instant, my skin flooded to a milky gray. The previous coating of pale human flesh peeled off and fell to the floor like a flaking sheet. My eyes reopened, with a dense, glistening black, complete with purple irises. Before the rest of the change could take place, I jolted forward on pure instinct. With a piercing scream, I slashed my hand at his neck, claws shooting out lightning fast. Lucky for him, he reacted quickly and jumped backward, rolled on the floor, and got to his feet right away. He lazily wiped the drool from his lips and rolled both shoulders. No more smiling. How about that? You found a spark, Destro bolstered. Alice's power rushed through my system, corrupting my flesh and mind with hostility and determination. All that smoldering emotion I couldn't stoke burst into a raging inferno, igniting my eyes in a brilliant flash and lifting my hair with some magic expanse. All the pain endured in my back had been numbed in a second, rapidly repairing and reinforcing my posture. I dragged myself up to a standing position and faced him with volatile desire. The transformation was not complete. My hair was still short and brown. My skin was white, my eyes black. The claws extended. I remained the same height, and I did not become any thinner. It was a strange state, rushed, premature. I could feel it still building inside. I'm going to kill you, I snarled furiously through clenched teeth. He left an intentional pause. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you trying to intimidate me? I was too busy thinking about all the ways I'm going to deprave your girlfriend. Somehow, he reached into my brain and saw Tansu, exchanging the visual of that boy in the caged house and the dead little girl. I shrieked and curled my fingers. A sudden voltage shot up my arm. You rotten son of a bitch! I'll rip your tongue out from your skull! Rotten? To be rotten, I would have had to start out as something pure. Don't be absurd. I licked my lips as aggression settled in my heart. With full intent to kill, I hurtled toward him and swung my jagged claws, but he was too quick. He dodged to the side once, then I swung again, and he dodged a second time. The house was small. He could only avoid me so far until he would be cornered, but the same goes for me. A final fist from me darted straight for his face. This time, when he stepped to the side, I grazed his cheek with my knuckle. As our skin made contact, he brought his own hand up, backhanded my fist, and made a quick jab at my face. He whacked me in the nose and giggled as he stepped back. It didn't hurt much. It was just a playful tap. In the living room of a home that was no longer mine, we stared each other down. I scratched my nose where he tapped me and planned my next move. At this time, the rest of the transformation smoothly sank in. The black hair poured out of my skull, and my body took on our shape. She opened her eyes once the form had settled. Much better, she grinned confidently. He straightened his back, then unbent his arm. In the glimmering darkness, a solid white bone sprouted from the underside of his arm, starting halfway down the underside of his forearm and extending a foot past his right elbow. This strange bone weapon unsheathed from his skin like a sword. He brought his forearm in front of his face, the blade now curved around his side and the sharp end was facing me. "Let's see if you can keep up," he snorted, then blitzed me. Immediately slashing at my neck, I pulled back, narrowly avoiding a vital hit. In response, I tried a sweeping kick at his legs, but he jumped up and planted his feet down on my leg, bending it inward. This did not hurt me. I threw my hand down quickly and grabbed his ankle to pull it upward, making him stagger backward. While his footing was lost, I rose fast, jumped forward, and swiped my claws at his face. He instantly planted one foot down and brought his arm in the way of my attack. My claws connected with his hand. One single nail stabbed through the back of his hand, coming out the other side, and stopping just short of his neck. A drop of sweat could be seen gliding down his cheek. "Close one," he hummed melodically. It was strange to move with Alice. Sometimes our actions were directly controlled by me, sometimes it was her, and sometimes I couldn't tell who performed the action. We moved separately, but at the same time, we moved as one. Blood dripped to the floor. A steady stream flowed from his hand. We both froze like that, eyes locked. His twisted smile was unbroken, my eyes filled with an unsatiated wrath. "What a delightful warm-up this is. Should we get serious?" Alice replied with cockiness. "But I'm enjoying this dance." His tongue lashed out and licked a full circle around his mouth. "You know, this hole in my hand is going to be quite a pain. I'm going to make you pay for it," Destro said confidently. "If you happen to make it out alive, it'll be healed by morning," Alice replied, still pushing for his throat. His face suddenly went lopsided. Struck with confusion, he asked, "Heal by morning? Funny." I ripped the jagged nail from his hand and swiped it with my other free hand, approaching him from his left side, coming down at an angle toward his head. He pulled his head back just enough to dodge. While my swing followed through with a heavy momentum, he lifted his arm and brought the blade that protruded from his elbow down onto my lingering forearm, tearing through layers of flesh. The sound of my skin opening up, exposing the bare bone, echoed in the empty air. The pain flooded me and forced me to fall back. "Damn it," Alice snarled. His hand didn't even seem to bother him. I stepped backward and held my arm loosely in the other. Destro let out a slow breath from his mouth, planning the next move. I didn't hesitate and jumped at him. This time, I hurled a fist at his face, but he did something I didn't expect. He swiped his hand between my fist and his face, and a trail of visible purple energy was left behind, creating an energy barrier exactly where his hand had swiped. My fist collided with the barrier with an airy slap. I swung again and again. Every punch I threw was interrupted by this manifested light wall wherever he swiped his hand, and just as quickly disappeared as the next one formed. I skipped a beat and held back a swing, but in that gap, he made the wall anyway in prediction of where I was going to attack. He saw my face gleam as I used my opposite hand to swing at his gut, leaving him no possible way to block. However, he returned my grin with one of equal pleasure. The barrier formed, but he allowed his hand to linger, and then he pushed it forward. The slate of energy moved in front of his flat palm and smashed into my nose, sending me stumbling backward and wide open. He took this opportunity to punch my chest and gut 2 or 3 times before finishing off his combo with a wide swing from his arm blade. In the second it took for him to switch from standard punches to his blade, I extended my claws in the path and blocked the gut slash. Bright purple sparks shot out from the melee impact. The heat between us was fierce. No more words were spoken, just an exchange of satisfied and pensive stares. The heat between us was fierce. I acted impatiently still, fueled by his prior threats. I leapt at him and sent my right arm forward, claws out like a sword jab. Calmly, Destro stepped to the side, and I missed completely. My claws stuck in the wall behind him. They went in deep, getting caught in the notches and old studs, leaving me trapped and fully exposed. We didn't try to break free. Instead, we just remained there, arm outstretched and hooked in the wall. He mockingly laughed. "You look so fucking stupid." I stood awkwardly, still in the same position as I was when I stopped. "Alice," I said worriedly. "Hold on," she whispered. Destro walked up to us and leaned his back against the same wall right next to where I was stuck. He folded his arms. That was the worst attempt I've ever seen. You put up even less of a struggle than the people I've killed, and that is saying something. We breathed evenly and calmly assessed the situation. I was worried, but it seemed Alice had a plan. Brother, you shouldn't underestimate your opponent, she cackled. He raised an eyebrow, still leaning like a cool guy. Suddenly, my nails burst out from the wall he was leaning on, piercing straight through his chest and belly in 4 different places. This time, it was his blood splashing outward, followed by a massive gasp from Destro. He screamed, vibrating my eardrums intensely while he clutched 2 of the pencil-thick claws protruding from his torso. Choking on blood, his eyes caught mine. You bitch! How did you do that? When he shouted, even more blood expelled from his mouth, staining his teeth and lips. We all have our tricks, Destro, Alice gloated. His body shook and was breathing sharply. You'll pay for that. I'll make you pay. Alice's response was to rip her claws from the wall, thus pulling them out from his chest as they returned through the wall. He stumbled forward a few feet, creating distance between us. I didn't understand how she did that. It was as though my nails bent inside the wall, but they weren't that long or flexible. They just went in one place and came out the other, as I understood it. He stared us down, breathing and bleeding heavily, not saying anything, just watching. I stood still and waited. Suddenly, he shouted frantically, Get your eyes off me! All of you are the same. He covered his face with his hand, and it almost sounded like he was crying. That distortion he boasted within was breaking. I cocked an eyebrow and felt a disturbing chill run up my back. He sniffled. No one cares. They never cared. They just use me over and over. Shit. Piece of shit. She didn't deserve it. He cried out while sharply hunching forward. He gripped his own head, and blood dripped from his mouth. Allie, you can't be. You should be at rest. What's happening to him? I asked, watching him thrash in a 2-inch space. Alice said nothing. Then he became calm, his face vacant. He let out a long breath, then lifted his head. With the tremor his body gave, he continued to stare at my face. I noticed that my face was steaming slightly. The small cuts and bruises sustained from going through the railing were slowly healing, giving off a light mist of dead skin and dried blood. What the fuck are you doing? Destro asked fearfully. Alice replied, What do you mean? These small wounds are nothing. I can heal them without effort, just as you with that hole in your hand. Of course we can all heal, but not like that. That's just... How? Destro exhaled, confused and angry. Jealous, even. Alice and I were both astonished by his words. I spoke to her in my head. What's he talking about? I thought you guys all had this healing power. We do. Guess mine's better, she explained. Out of nowhere, Destro grunted and straightened out his back and looked to the ceiling. His torso shot hot red blood like a sprinkler. He began to groan loudly. The house echoed and shook with his deep yell. His body started to shake and his arms straightened out. His body gave one final spastic motion. Then he braced himself on one knee and looked upward at me. Everyday pale skin complemented his brown eyes. His hair receded a few inches and was a lighter brown now. He was human, or appeared to be. His expression was frightened and angry. Large, tired eyes glared at me. It was easy enough to tell that he was just a kid. But this kid has an immense sadness. Something that screamed from inside of him. I could tell just by looking at him. With blood still spilling from his chest, the first move he made was to slick back his near shoulder-length hair, moving his bangs back and slightly to the side, using his thick blood to make it stick, though random clumps still fell back in his face. He continued to stare with a demented grin. This isn't over. I swear to God, I'll return. And when I do, you'll be sorry. You'll all be sorry. I didn't get a chance to retort or lunge to finish him. Faster than he should be able to, given the severity of his wounds, He turned and bolted out the front door like a wild animal that just escaped its cage. I attempted to move, but collapsed to my knees, as if his presence clashing with mine kept me upright, and without it, I was boneless. Hands jittering, lungs tight and lacking air. I felt the tether of his movement thin as he got further away in an unknown direction, until it snapped, and I was left feeling so tired. With him gone, and the hostility suddenly cold, I felt an inner disconnect. She released me. My teeth snapped together, and a soft groan came from my diaphragm. The moaning grew louder and louder as my white skin began to rise off my body, revealing the tan skin beneath. My hair quickly receded back to its normal length and regained its color. The rest of the reversion took place, and my groan was silenced. Shaking, trying to regain my breath, I stood myself up again. My eyes fluttered open, and I examined my ordinary body in all its glory. Stricken by fear, I felt the jolt in my body urging me to rush after him. "Alice, come on, he is going after Tansu!" I shouted. "Kim, relax." Taken aback, my eyelids fluttered. "Relax?" "He doesn't know where she is. He only saw a memory of you two at school." She groaned, her skull swelling. "He went in the opposite direction. I can feel him getting further away." "Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure?" I panicked. "Yes. If anyone's going to kill your friends, it'll be me. Now take a breath," she urged. It took a minute or two, but my breathing inevitably slowed, and the taut nature of my muscles loosened. "Holy crap. Well, it seems he hasn't disposed of his vessel yet," she spoke inside my head. "He was just like me then. A human with someone like you inside." "Pretty much. A bit unexpected, honestly. Most Tuffle go on killing sprees to get the humans ejected before seeking other Tuffle to fight." "I guess we got lucky, in a sense," I exhaled. As soon as my lungs emptied and attempted to refill, I was stricken by overwhelming emotions. Fighting the tears, I spoke. He was really going to." The thought of him undressing me snagged my words. "Alice, why would he do that?" My hand covered my mouth and my voice cracked. Even she didn't have a sarcastic remark for something like this. Instead, she spoke neutrally. "His host must be really sick in the head. Whatever happened to the kid to get Sin's attention must have been truly evil, and that reflects the Tuffle within." I stuttered. "That's not part of it. You demons don't just..." "No, Tuffle don't have a sex drive. We don't even have genitals, as I'm sure you noticed." I swallowed hard and wiped the tears, curling my knees to my chest and shivering as the horror settled. Tears streamed down my face for a few minutes, and the uncomfortable silence permeated. My entire body was hot. I couldn't stop shaking, and my breaths were irregular. Placing my hand over my heart, I felt the beating, rapid rhythm. My breathing escalated, and the tears kept coming. Everything I just experienced kept playing on repeat. His voice, the punches, being thrown through the railing, and nearly... I've been beaten, made fun of, mistreated, and brought to the edge of self-destruction. But this was heinous and terrifying. I can't cope with it. I can't. I could feel my sanity slipping. All that anger and protective drive slipped through my fingers like grains of sand. Gone, leaving me whimpering, broken, and an afraid mess. Alice sighed. "All right, that's enough. Get a hold of yourself," she said with detest. I cupped my face and tried to breathe slowly, recenter, place myself in this world and assure that I'm all right. I'm okay. I survived. I kept rubbing my eyes and the tears lessened over the next few minutes. The quaking burn in my chest simmered and the vision started to fade. I looked around, cognizant again, but so very fragile. Alice hummed, "You did fairly well for a scared little girl." I could barely talk. "Screw you. How the hell did you expect me to react to that?" "I expected you to react faster. I kept my mouth shut so you could focus, but all you did was shut down and take the beating." "He threw me over the railing." She paused, a response in her tongue, but instead she muttered, How's your arm feeling? I looked. The cut was a downward gash, placed just below my elbow, on the outer curve of my forearm. It was deep, but not bone deep. The wound was radiating beneath the skin and felt very strange. The pain was unreal, sharp and burning. I should be passing out from this, and yet it was bearable. Hurting and not hurting at the same time, almost pulsing in and out between tolerable and agonizing. Why does it all hurt so much now? But when you took over, it didn't hurt that bad. As long as I'm with you, I can focus my energy on your injuries and speed up what your body already does, and does so passively. I can still divert power and get it done faster, but that takes more out of me. I continued to examine it. Did you see his weird-ass weapon? By the looks of it, I feel like it should have cut my arm clean off. I sniffled. If he was some lunatic with a kitchen knife, he wouldn't have even pierced my skin. But with the attack coming from a tuffle, it's different. Different how? There's a dark energy behind each attack that confuses your body and disorientates your cells. However, at the same time, it's being healed by the same energy that damaged it. Your body simply doesn't understand. Don't worry about it too much. Interesting. I cleared my throat, almost back to normal, but completely exhausted. How long will it take this bigger one to heal? I'd give it 18 hours. You should know that wounds this deep may still leave scars. Thin ones, but they'll be there. Noted. Can you make sure to heal anything on my face and hands better and faster? I need to make sure no one sees. Fine. By the way, how did you do that thing where your claws came out somewhere else? Something you have to understand. As many impossible things to you are more than possible for us. Our strength, speed, skin density, and reaction times are all enhanced to a certain degree, scaled by our host's own abilities. Additionally, we are equipped with many tools for combat. Most of us have melee capabilities, as you just saw, and we all have the capability to use our energy to do impossible things that are only limited by our creativity. That, and a lot of practice and deep understanding of ourselves. So, a lot of magic mumbo-jumbo. I made light jazz hands to emphasize. She huffed. However you want to justify it, runt. Just know that I can't do what everyone else can do, and they can't do what I can do. It's all unique. My knees were stiff, and my ankles made light snapping noises with each motion. I started to pace back and forth, keeping blood flow to my legs, forcing my body to move to ward off the dizziness. Do you see now why we need to get stronger? I breathed quietly through my nose, thinking, how strong? How strong do we have to be to take on anyone? She took a deep breath as well. There is a stage we can achieve, one so powerful that it's an entirely separate transformation. But no human can endure the physical toil. It's a power only a whole Tuffle can manage. Even then, it's rarely ever done. What is it? I demanded an answer. She sighed. It's called Ascend. And that power will keep every threat at bay? Keep us safe? That type of power requires a body trail, the exact thing you're so keen to avoid. A pause stifled us, each thinking in circles, wondering exactly how we could survive this with our goals being so unique among our peers. It was a mess. Truly a godforsaken fate to stare down this path. You knew, didn't you? I started. Knew what? That he would be here. That desire I felt to come back, separate of my own want. That was you, wanting to fight him. She snickered. If I hadn't, then he may not have found us for a while. With you laying low, it makes it harder for Tiffle to pinpoint our exact location. We needed this fight. Look at how much closer you and I are now. My eyebrow twitched in anger. You brought me here to fight him. He could have killed me. But he didn't. She stated the obvious, her words fiery and sharp. He still lives, but we gained some valuable experience, don't you think? I guess, she grunted. All you've done is pester me for information. You just got a textbook of data and still aren't satisfied. I sighed, eyes easing shut in weightlessness on my soul. You're right. We needed tonight, for a lot of reasons. Her nose crinkled, the angry expression projected into my mind. We'll be more prepared next time. When we recover, we'll hunt him down and kill him. Yeah, if I'm able to actually transform. You won't have a choice. Alice, were you scared? Scared? Of what? Going after Destro. You just sort of let him run. Absolutely not. I tried, but I couldn't move my legs. I'm not used to fusing with you, and we didn't exactly ease into this fight. Okay. Don't you ever insinuate that I was afraid again, she demanded. I rolled my eyes, almost relishing in her cruel demeanor. My eyes were drawn to my arm again. Her power was working fast in the sense that the bleeding had mostly stopped, just leaving the amplified pain. My voice started with a squeak and carried on quietly. You know, before all this, I never wanted to kill anyone. I mean, sometimes I thought about beating my dad into the dirt, but the only person whose life I wanted to end was my own. And that was a long time ago. I didn't know what I was supposed to do back then. And now, I really have no clue. I think you're meant for something more. The both of us are gonna kill sin. That is motivation enough. Her tone changed drastically, sad yet determined. And along the way, my siblings and your enemies will fall to their knees at our mercy. They will all know how we have suffered. I chewed on those words, picking them apart, frightening how close yet far our ambitions were. There was an itch on my shoulder. I scratched it and adjusted my shirt, shaking off the splinters and dust. I took in a deep breath and let it out slowly. You know, I still don't get the point of it all. Why give demons to kids like me? Make us fight and get strong just to face off against this chrism person. There has to be more to it, don't you think? It's a game that no one knows the purpose of. We fight, we die, we suffer, all for some agenda beyond our comprehension. At least we get to enjoy a little chaos along the way. She grinned. My brows lowered, face still red from crying and dried blood clinging to my skin. It's twisted and evil. To take already suffering kids and promise them one thing, just to ensnare them in a battle royale. He deserves to die for that alone. I mean, how many kids has he? I choked, the thought of so many similar stories meeting a gruesome end. Alice smiled a huge, evil grin. Countless. The thought of my mom crashed against my skull. Sin killed her. He manipulated me and my dad against each other and planned for me to be a part of this game. But why? I balled my fist. Killing him is the goal. We both agree. She nodded. I raised my head and glared into the abyss with sharp eyes, unaware that my irises were a mix of blue and purple tones. I'm going to avenge my mother. I'm going to redeem my father. And I'm going to end this cycle of suffering. There was a silence, an extended period where we just examined each other's motives and our personalities. I got uncomfortable after a while. My average self sank in. Alice whispered, Kim, let's go home. Did you just call it home? My stomach fluttered with fireflies. I smiled, breaking the hostility I harbored. She didn't respond. Instead, I could feel her slowly lean into the dark corners. Alice, can I trust you? Maybe. I guess I'll take that over nothing. I stood there in the living room, clutching my stained arm, nursing it the best I could. My back ached as well. I could feel cuts scrape against the fabric of my shirt. I was sore all over, but she said I'll be okay by tomorrow, at least for the most part. I looked to the floor, all the broken rail pieces scattered around. After a moment of lingering, I twisted my stiff neck, causing the bubbles to pop and the rigid pressure released. I was so incredibly worried about a lot of things, and yet, for the first time, I'm not alone. I have people in my life, people I care about. I now realize how precious this life is, how fragile. They are worth protecting, and I will protect them, because only I can.